Hey there, it's Julie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 3 girls. Mia is 1, Skye is 5, and Josie is 7. My husband Mike and I and the girls, we live in New Hampshire in a double-wide mobile home. So part of my channel is about that mobile home living life, stay-at-home mom life. And the other part is dedicated to Skye. She was diagnosed with leukemia in April of 2019. And she finished chemo this past May after a 2-year treatment, which we're so happy about. But we like to share part of her story and our journey as a family just to bring some awareness to childhood cancer, because that is very near and dear to us now. So I figured today I would do part 2 of her cancer story. If you go through my videos, you'll see that there's a part 1 where I talk about how we found out she was sick and what it was like in the very beginning. We had a very, very rough start. She actually almost died the day we found out she was sick, and she was in the ICU for about a week. So it was a very hard start to treatment. Also, I just wanted to give a warning out there. I will be talking about cancer, childhood cancer. If that is going to trigger anybody or be devastating to anybody, please feel free to skip this video. I don't want to bring up any bad memories for anyone. Also, I will be talking about her specific diagnosis of B-cell ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. There's other types of leukemia and other types of childhood cancer, but if I mention anything like with her medications or anything medical like that, it's pertaining to her diagnosis of B-cell ALL. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, probably about, I want to say 6-7 months now, but the timing didn't feel right. I think I was meant to wait until she was done with treatment so I could look back on it with a more clear frame of mind. So the last few days I've been sitting at the table, just writing down notes, breaking things up into categories. I figured that would be easier in telling you, what's been happening the past 2 years and just what life's been like when your child has cancer. So I figured I'd start where we left off in the other video. Skye is done with the ICU, and now we're ready to begin the first month of treatment, and they like to keep the kids in the hospital for a full month, just to get everything started and see how their body responds to everything. So we're down on the children's oncology floor, and Skye is hooked up to a feeding tube. A lot of the kids start with feeding tubes because they don't have much of an appetite. And Skye was on a blood pressure medication because when she had that episode, I'm going to call it an episode, the first night we were there, we don't know exactly what happened. I heard one of the doctors mention at one point a pulmonary embolism, but we don't really know. Just basically everything dropped, and she came very close to not being here anymore. So she's on blood pressure medication. She was on amlodipine. Her blood pressure would be considered high for an adult, really high for an adult. So she was on that. She was on the feeding tube. They were giving her a laxative because she was a little bit blocked up just from not having a regular diet the last few weeks, and not going to the bathroom. So she was on a laxative. They were pretty much just trying to give her induced diarrhea, clear her out, hopefully wean her off the feeding tube. So they put a portacath in her arm, and that's where she started to get her chemo. That's where all the other medicines went into. If she needed platelets, if she needed blood transfusions, which she did a lot of the time because her counts were really low. Before we leave to go home, at the end of that first month, the port is taken out of the arm and one's put in the chest, like a semi-permanent one that she would have for the next 2 years. So she had that done. She had a dental exam as well as an eye exam. I was not there for the eye exam. Mike was with her that day. I was home with Josie. So, you know, chemo can have lots of side effects. So, when it comes to eye exams, they just like to tell you to, you know, what to look out for. Long-term use of steroids can cause cataracts, so she's due to get another eye exam soon after being on steroids for 2 years. I was with her when she got her dental exam. They're basically in different buildings, but all the buildings are connected. So I remember that day the nurse brought us there. I pushed Skye in a wheelchair, and then she took the wheelchair back or left it somewhere. But when we were done with the exam, I didn't know that I was supposed to call the nurse to come back and get us. So Skye had a episode of diarrhea, and luckily I had a diaper on hand. And then I got lost carrying her back, trying to find our way back to Children's. And like, I found the right elevator, and then right before we got on the elevator, she threw up everywhere. And that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me, because she had started chemo at that point, and that was her first time being really sick from it. So I'm like, whoa, this is, we're at that point. She's getting physically sick from chemo. So that was a hard moment. So every morning the doctors would come and do rounds. I would say between like 9 and 11 o'clock we would see them every day. And I would go out in the hall, and you know, they'd all stand around with their paperwork and their computers, and you know, they would give a synopsis of the patient and what's been going on and what to keep an eye out for, and you know, what might happen later that day or during the week. And then they would go in and, you know, talk to Skye. It wouldn't be the same group of doctors every morning. One day we might have one group, the next day a completely different one, or sometimes like a combination of doctors from one day to the next. And they were amazing. The doctors at Boston Children's are absolutely amazing. They work tirelessly. They're a great team. The only thing I got a little bit frustrated with was that it wasn't with the big things. It was like little bits of communication were just a bit off. They weren't always on the same page as far as, like, you know, when we might be able to do this, or when we might be able to go home, or just little bits like that. Nothing huge. So we dealt with that a little bit. But the nurses and the clinical assistants and the resource people and the volunteers, they became pretty much our best friends while we were there. The clinical assistants were in every hour to, you know, take her blood pressure and just give her quick exams. The nurses were in there. The monitor was pretty much beeping all of the time, so the nurses were in to switch out the medication, or to, you know, stop the beeping, and sometimes it was just a battery issue, so they were always there pretty much right outside the hall when we needed them. It was great. They helped us learn all of the little details, you know, as far as like measuring her medicines, and, you know, just all the little bits of information that we would need to, you know, do it on our own at home. So we were really grateful for them. Let's see, what else? Okay, so Skye was very close to being fully potty trained before she got sick at 3, but, you know, getting leukemia, it kind of set things back a little bit, especially because, you know, giving her laxatives, she had the induced diarrhea, which was very often, and she was also too tired to make it to the bathroom if she did need to go. One thing that they taught me there was that, you know, chemo comes out through the pee and the poop, so you had to wear gloves. I had to wear gloves to change her diaper. Also, when I got pregnant with Mia, you know, they said definitely double up on the gloves, because that can harm an unborn baby. It can harm anybody. those levels of chemo. So that's one thing we had to do there. And they also, when she did, pee in her diaper, they would, they would take it and they would weigh it just to see how much urine output she was doing. So, let's see, looking at my notes here, that was pretty much the first month there. What that entailed, just getting started on chemo and seeing how her body reacted. So we kept a really close eye on her. Okay, let's move on. Mike and I making a schedule. Now, Mike got about 6 weeks off from work, which was amazing. He's worked for the same company for about 22 years now, so they were super understanding. They were really great about it and taking the time off. So he was with us in the hospital for about the first 2 weeks, I wanted to say, 2.5 weeks. And Josie was safely with family. She, I feel really bad, she was bounced around a lot, but she was very well taken care of and loved. She got to have sleepovers with cousins. My sister-in-law, brother-in-law took great care of her. Mike's parents, my mom and stepdad. So she was well taken care of. We're really grateful for that, for all that everyone did. So Mike started to go home for 6 out of 7 days. He would be with Josie and they would do fun things every day. And then I would go home Sunday afternoons. We made a plan that Josie would be brought to the hospital to visit with her sister for a few hours, and we would spend some family time together. I think it was mostly Mike's folks who took her down there. And then I would say goodbye to Skye, and I would catch a ride home with Josie and my in-laws. And then I would spend the night with Josie and a little bit of the next day. And then usually my mom and stepdad would bring me back to Boston, and then Mike would head home to be with Josie. So it was a lot of moving around. Mike and I felt really torn. As parents with a sick child in the hospital and another child at home, it was hard. He felt super duper torn, especially with Josie. She's a very sensitive person, but she's very closed off at the same time. She shows her emotions in anger mostly, and she doesn't like to talk about a lot of things that are bothering her. I'm kind of the same way. She probably got that from me, but when Skye got sick, she knew it was bad. She knew it was really bad, that her sister was really sick, and she just quietly processed it, and she didn't like to talk about it. She didn't like to hear anything about it. So she kind of just processed the whole thing in her own way. So I tried to do everything I could to, lightly bring up the subject about it, and we just tried to keep her as happy as we could through the whole thing. Alright, trying to get rest when you're in the hospital. I mean, I think that's kind of like a stigma. You don't get, it's a hospital, you don't sleep well, you don't rest well. So you catch breaks when you can, if there's like a nice quiet part of the day, or you have like a decent stretch at night, but it's rare. Rest, it's very hard to come by there, especially because of the rough start that Skye had. That night I had put my head on the pillow for not even 30 seconds before she had that episode. So I think that was a lot. It was very traumatic for me. So I had trouble sleeping after that. I'm not a good sleeper to begin with, but after that, it was even worse. So your mind's going a million miles a minute. You don't know if something bad's going to happen. So it's hard to allow yourself to rest while you're there. And at this point, Skye's well on steroids. I had heard of roid rage before. I heard the doctors mention it and some of the nurses, like, beware, when it kicks in, it's gonna be rough. You're gonna see a different side of your child. And I'm like, oh, not my sweet Skye. She'd never thrown a fit. She doesn't whine or complain. Oh my gosh, Skye did a complete 180. I felt like my child was taken away from me. Hold on, my phone's ringing. Sorry about that. I felt like my child was taken away from me. You couldn't even, like, breathe around her. You couldn't sneeze, cough, like, move around. She would flip out at everything. I'm gonna be honest. My sweet baby was. I don't want to be mean and say she was acting like a monster, because it wasn't her fault. But wow, the steroids are just. It completely changed her. And it did increase her appetite, which was a good thing. So another reason why this, rest is hard to come by, not just for me but for Skye, the steroids keep her up a lot, and it's like this. At the same time, her body is really sore and tired, but the steroids, keep her up and wanting to move around. But it did increase her appetite, and I'm gonna be honest, for that whole entire month, she ate pretty much nothing but Doritos and Smart Food popcorn. And the doctors are like, you know what, whatever she eats is a good thing. We just want them to eat. They want the kids to eat and just get some calories in. So, it would be the middle of the night, and Skye would be begging for food. And at that point, like, I would always make sure to keep stocked up on the snacks. We had family bring some. I would use our food vouchers to go down to the cafeteria and stock up on, bags of chips and popcorn. And I would have to get up in the middle of the night and bring them to her. Or a few times, it was funny, the next day, the nurse, she would still be there in the morning. She would say, it was dark in the room last night. It was about 3 in the morning, and I heard this munching on the bed. So Skye had gotten a bag of chips, opened it up, and was just picture it. Your kid's sitting up in the dark, and she's munching on chips. Just I laugh about it now. I think it was really funny. The nurses thought it was funny. So yeah, rest is hard to come by, but you learn to adjust. So you're at the hospital for a month. What's there to do? You're pretty much stuck on in a room, on a floor, in a building. What's there to do? So for the kids, there's a playroom and a resource room. The playroom is for the younger kids, I would say. I'm going to try and put in some pictures as I go, so it'll probably be blocking my face, but if I can, I'll put some in. There's a playroom for the younger kids. There's puzzles and books, and you can do like little paints and Play-Doh, and there's a whole wall of toys, and there's a beautiful view of the city of Boston. And at the other end of the hall, there's the resource room, where I would say it's for like ages 6 and up. There's a big TV in there with video games, like the Wii or an Xbox or one of those things. So a lot of the older kids go in there to play. There's binders full of movies. You can bring them back to your room and watch them. There's like crafts for older kids, and there's like little stashes of candy in there. I think those are mostly for the parents. They give you like little coffee pods, Dunkin' Donuts coffee pods or Starbucks. And the resource people in there they're amazing. They work really hard to keep the kids happy, and they always have a smile on their face. It's just great. Let's see. Also on the floor, trying to think. They have clowns that come by a couple times a week. They go in the playroom, the resource room, they walk through the halls. If your child is too unwell to leave the bed, they come visit in the room, and Skye she really liked the clowns. They were really funny. They do things like little celebrations, little like theme parties. Once there was a makeup party, and Skye absolutely loved that. She got to keep some of the makeup, and they totally pampered the kids. What else? Some volunteers came in and made pillowcases. Bunch of women brought in their sewing machines, and the kids got to choose fabrics, and they would sew pillowcases for the kids. Skye, I think we have 3 of them. She was obsessed with trolls at the point, so she got trolls pillowcases. And that was really nice. We had a lot of family visit from all sides of the family. That was really nice, just to keep us company, and it was great to see everybody. It brought us a lot closer together, I think. Downstairs there's the cafeteria. They have like a pizza bar and a salad bar, and there's a little Subway counter. There's a Starbucks downstairs as well. There's a bakery, and they have like soups and sandwiches and a bunch of treats. So that's downstairs, and it's Boston, right? Boston is a beautiful city. I actually grew up in Massachusetts, so I had been to Boston plenty of times, but not as many times as I have the last 2 years. But Fenway Park is right down the street. Not that we went there, but it was very close by. The Boston Children's is located on Longwood Ave. That's a pretty busy street. There's a convenience store right there. They have the Longwood Gallery, and there's a bunch of eateries in there. So if I got the chance, you know, Skye was napping and a nurse was sitting with her, and I needed some fresh air, I would just go out, you know, pick up some personal items at the store or get some takeout food. So I got to do that. There's a rooftop garden on top of the building. We went up there a few times. I think most of the time it was like under construction, or they're doing some landscaping, but there's like a lawn and flowers and a path to walk around. There's tables to eat up there, and it was a very, very beautiful place, and a beautiful view of the city of Boston. Let's see. Hospital accommodations. So I'm going to be talking about the ones in the hospital and clinic as well. First off, there's a washer and dryer on the oncology floor, because sometimes you end up staying there a long time, not just that first month stay, but you know, there are unexpected hospitalizations that happen, which I'll be talking more about later. But you find yourself there for, you know, days, weeks on end, and you only packed a little bit of clothes, so they do have a washer and dryer, and you take turns with the key, and they provide you with detergent and dryer sheets, which is really nice. There's a couple of, like, I would call them kitchenettes on the floor. There's a freezer and a fridge. So if you get little mini fridges in your hospital rooms, but there's bigger ones in the kitchenettes. So if you have like extra food, or family brings you food, that's what happened to us. My stepmom cooked a lot of food, like prepped meals for us, and we labeled them and we put them in the fridge and freezer there. So they do that. There's a Keurig. There's they keep, you know, well stocked up on like bread for sandwiches, like peanut butter sandwiches, jelly. There's condiments in there, little tubs of cereal and juice. So they have that if you need to grab your kid like a quick snack, even if all they can stomach is crackers. They're just right there in the kitchenettes. So yeah, that. Now here's one thing. When Skye was in the ICU, we were in there for about 5 days. It's harder to sleep in the ICU rooms than the oncology floor hospital rooms. So I remember sleeping on a chair 1 or 2 nights. Mike was able to, they provide sleeping quarters for, it's just for the parents of the kids in the ICU. They provide sleeping quarters on the other side of the building around where the cafeteria is. They're like little dorm rooms. There's a bed and TV, and then there's like showers and bathrooms out in the hallway. So that was really nice. Mike was able to sleep there for a few nights. That was really accommodating, because there's only so much space that parents can sleep in the hospital rooms and the ICU rooms. So they did that. In the resource room, back on the oncology floor, they catered lunches and dinners a few times a week, which was really nice. You know, we didn't have to spend all our money on food downstairs in the cafeteria. Sometimes they would do like sandwiches, or there was a taco night or a pizza night. So that was really nice that they had catered meals. It took a lot of worry off the parents. Let's see. So another accommodation, both at the hospital and in the clinic, they have social workers and resource people, and they help us out with money, basically. When we were there that first month of the hospital, and those unexpected hospitalizations that again I'll talk about later, one of the social workers would come by with a cafeteria card or a card for the bakery downstairs. So we're there for a few days. That card will last us a few days for meals, which is really nice. They also gave us parking passes, because with Mike, once Mike started going home and the coming and going, if we had family visit, we would give them a parking pass. Visiting all day, that adds up to like $40 or $50 for parking. So they gave us parking passes, which is really nice. And then later on, when we started going to clinic, we met a resource lady, really nice. She offered to help us out with bills at home, because things add up quite a lot with medical bills and with prescriptions. So they just took a lot of the worry off our shoulders, because we were focused on Skye. So yeah, all of our focus was on her and her treatment and just our family life now. So she is in contact with a whole bunch of cancer organizations, as well as funds there at the clinic. So sometimes we got help with 1 or 2 months of lot fee for our mobile home park. A couple of times we got money to put towards filling our heating tank for fuel, few car payments, so that basically helped us pay off one of our cars. So that was it took so much worry off our shoulders. We're so eternally grateful for all of the help financially. It takes such a worry off, so you can focus on your child. So when you see all those like donation bins, or people are posting to raise money for an organization on their Facebook, things like that, it goes such a long way, not only helping with working for cures for cancer, but helping little families like us. It trickles down, and it makes the biggest difference in our lives. So we don't have to worry about that bill. We can put it towards her medical bills, or we have meals while we're at the hospital. So believe me, it truly makes the biggest difference, and we're very grateful for everything. Okay, let's talk about going home. We're done with that first month, and we're ready to head home and go into the next phase of her treatment. It started to really sink in. I was very nervous going home, because you're so used to being surrounded by nurses and doctors right outside your door 24/7, and now you're going home and you're scared that something might happen, and just getting used to handling the medications, the home medications on your own. We were set up with a home nurse straight away. So pretty much the day after we came home, I think we met her. She's amazing. She's become part of our family to this day. Even though treatment's over, I still consider her a part of our family. She's just absolutely amazing. Skye loved her, warmed up to her almost immediately, so we're really grateful for that. But yet Skye was, her blood work was stable, and she had gotten the port put in her chest, and it was, I don't think I'll ever forget this. I was in one of the little kitchenettes. This was towards the end of the first month. I was getting a cup of coffee. One of the dads that I bump into a lot, and we talk to each other about our kids and how they're doing. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I heard Skye's ANC was up to 800. You guys get to go home soon." And I'm like, "Yeah," because I'm still learning all the medical terms and all of the numbers. And so I'm like, "What's the ANC again?" Which is the absolute neutrophil count. That's basically a glimpse of how her immune system is doing. So 800 at that point was fabulous. It's gone as low as 10, and normal is into the thousands. So yeah, I'll never forget that moment, because I'm like, what's the ANC again? So yeah, she got her chest port, got home, we met the home nurse, and then we basically started on the next phase of her treatment. So we were pretty much back at clinic the whole so towards the end of that first month, Skye's on steroids, and her body just blew up like a balloon. She was almost unrecognizable to me. So that was really hard to see, just the drastic change in her body, because it was only a few months later that the swelling had gone down and she started to get bony. So that was really hard. It was hard at first to get her to take her medicines, because she's on like four home meds, and at the hospital we had been sneaking them into food, like ice cream and those little Danimal smoothies, but she could tell that they were in there. So I mean, sometimes both her and I were crying just to get her to take her daily meds. But after a while she got used to it. Sometimes she would pout a little bit, but then she started taking them no problem. So basically for the next year and a half she's on the couch. She basically lives on the couch. She's tired, she's listless, she's sore, she can't always get comfortable. Just seeing your bald, bony child on the couch, just completely out of it. I don't have words. And then there were times where she would just break down crying and say, "I wish I wasn't in pain. I wish I wasn't in so much pain." Like, how do you comfort them? I mean, I would go off and cry by myself in the bathroom for a little bit, but like, how do you hold them, you rub their bald little head, you kiss them and rock them back and forth, but like, how do you say it's gonna be okay, it's gonna get better, because you don't know. Also at this point we're trying to get her to eat better. The doctors are still saying, whatever she takes in is a good thing, just try and make it calorie dense. So we have her on whole milk and, ice cream, chocolate. She's developed a sweet tooth at this point, not just a salty one. So basically anything that she eats is a good thing. So now we're on a different schedule. We go to clinic every week. So I think Mondays, it started off Tuesday, but Monday became our clinic day. She would get her long infusions, 15 cycles of a chemo called asparaginase. That's the one where she's hooked up into the infusion chair for many hours. And then when those 15 cycles are done, then we start going to clinic every 3 weeks. What would happen is we go to clinic the first week, she would get her other 2 chemos, and then week 2 the nurse would come by and give her the chemo, and then week 3, the nurse would come by 2 days. Day 1 would be to take blood to see if it was high enough for her to receive the chemo, and if it was, then she would come back the next day and do the chemo. So that became our new schedule. Let's see, she would get lumbar punctures every 9 weeks. They do that right there in clinic. She goes to, you know, a little surgical room, and they, you know, put chemo in her spine, and just to make sure all of the cancer cells are gone there. And then after, I want to say after a year, it went from every 9 weeks to 18 weeks. Now this hospitalization is part of the protocol, basically her treatment. So we were home about a month, and then they like to give, you know, speaking from Skye specific diagnosis, they administer a really heavy-duty dosage of one of the chemos called methotrexate. She would get quick pushes of it for the, you know, the remainder of her treatment, but at this point in a treatment, they give like a really hefty dose. So they said, pack your bags, expect to be there at least a week. So we would go to clinic, and she's hooked up to the chair. I think the infusion was about 5 hours, and then what happens next was we went over to Children's on the oncology floor. We got a room there. The doctor said for some kids it takes 2 days, 3 days. Other kids it takes over a week to get all of the methotrexate flushed out of the system. So basically you want it non-detectable. We were there for 5 days. They would do the blood work every night to test the level, and I remember at one point just, you know, crossing my fingers, praying that it would go down, because one night it hadn't changed at all, like not even a fraction. So that was a little disconcerting, but then it dropped, and it continued to drop until it was non-detectable, and we got to go home. That was the week that they did the makeup party. That was also the week where Skye lost the rest of her hair. It came out very quickly. I have it saved in a bag, and I'll always keep it, but she had like a few spaghetti strands still on that that hadn't come off yet. So I took scissors, and I cut off the last few strands, which was really hard. But yep, she lost the rest of her hair that week. Also a little setback, she developed these really bad blisters on her feet. She had been complaining of foot pain, and she was wearing slippers, and she would freak out if we tried to take them off. But she finally did, and that's when we discovered the blisters, because she couldn't walk, she couldn't move around, and you know, the doctors were saying, oh, it's just probably neuropathic pain or neuropathy. Basically, you know, when your foot falls asleep and it starts to wake up a little, and you get those pins and needles. So that's what it would feel like to her. But when we finally got that slipper off and we saw the blisters, the nurse said it was a very rare reaction to such a high dose of chemo over the past few days. So she said she had never seen it before in all of her years as a nurse, but it was an adverse reaction. And a dermatologist came by and took a look at it and gave us an ointment for it. So a topical ointment. So we put that on, and it eventually went back down. I remember we had just gotten home, and I had 2 ointments. One is the numbing cream that goes on her port, because before she's accessed, like a needle goes into her chest, into her port. So we put numbing cream on it first for like an hour before she's accessed. So I had these 2, they looked almost identical, tubes of ointment, and I put the foot cream on her port, and I put the numbing cream on her foot. I realized my mistake shortly after, and it all turned out okay. That was really funny. It's another thing I can laugh about now. So that's basically, you know, our changes in schedule. you know, going to the clinic weekly, and then it turns into every 3 weeks. I'm going to share 3 moments that had a huge impact on me. Now, the whole experience did. Like, a devastating impact. But there's 3 specific moments that I remember that, like, 2 you wouldn't think that would have much of an impact, but they did. So the first one was, we started going to the weekly clinic visits, and I'm a very anxious driver, so I don't do well on the highway driving or like far distances, so Mike would do the driving. Josie was with family. We were bringing Skye to clinic. It was one of her first clinic visits, like in the first couple months, I should say. And it was very early in the morning. We had a lot of early morning appointments, like right when the doors opened. So we live an hour and a half, 2 hours away, more depending on traffic. So we would leave super early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I always like to get there a little early just so we can sit and relax for a little bit before going in. So it was, I want to say, like between 5 and 5:30 in the morning. We're on the highway, and I don't remember what exit it was, but like off of the exit, like where the ramp is, there's this beautiful spread of trees. And I have a thing for trees. I love them. I love that, you know, in the summertime, like this is like August now, I think. The trees were in like that full deep green color, just absolutely beautiful. And it was very early in the morning, so the sky was still like a dark purple, like a tinge of pink, from, you know, dawn coming, and it was just absolutely beautiful. The air was a little bit misty, and just the trees set against the sky, and it was absolutely gorgeous. But in that moment, I felt completely stuck. Normally, like, you know, a view like that would just, in a deep breath, I would just feel amazing. But at that moment, I felt really, really stuck. I did not see a light at the end of this tunnel. All I saw was this new normal. Just this endless cycle of clinic visits and seeing my baby in pain. So yeah, I don't know why, like, randomly on the highway a bunch of trees would do that to me, but I don't know, that moment had an effect on me. I felt really stuck, and I just didn't see any hope. Yeah, that was just a really sucky feeling. Moment number 2 was, before we started going to clinic. It was actually when we were still in that first month stay at the hospital. We got a tour of the Jimmy Fun Clinic. This nice man took us on a tour. We put Skye in a little wagon, and we walked through the buildings and over to the clinic, which is in the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute building. So we walk into the lobby, and, you know, we see, you know, kids running around and doing activities, and then he has us go into the infusion room. It's this big long room, and there's chairs all around, and I felt like I was on a different planet. You never get used to seeing these beautiful, precious children sitting in infusion chairs getting chemo. It's haunting. You never get used to it. So just seeing that in person for the first time, I mean, you see it on movies and on TV, but seeing it in person, it felt very surreal. It felt like you're on a different planet. Okay, so the third moment that had a huge impact on me, this vision, this picture still burns in my mind every day. Skye was napping. Again, this is in like the first month stay. Skye was napping, and I was taking a walk around the floor, grab a cup of coffee or something, and sometimes we left the doors to our rooms open. It just helped us feel like we were towards the outside world a little bit, you know, the hustle and bustle of the hall, or sometimes families would visit each other. So I was walking past one room, the door was open, and the bed was empty, but sitting on the windowsill was a dad, and on his chest, laying completely limp, was his bald little child, maybe 2 years old, if that, just laying limply on him. And the dad was just staring out the window with the most melancholy, sad look on his face. I'll never forget that. That had a huge impact on me, just because that's life. That is reality right there. It shouldn't be a thing, but it is. It's very hard to watch. Let's talk home meds. I saved some of the bottles. Actually, last weekend I had a big box full of them. I just never brought them to the drugstore. There's like a big depository where you can put like used medications. There's one at the clinic too, but I just never got to bringing them. So last weekend I got rid of pretty much all of them. I saved a few just to show in the video, but so these are all Skye's medications. I'll go through, let's start with steroids. So as I said before, every cycle is 3 weeks. For the first 5 days of the cycle, Skye is on steroids twice a day for 5 days, and to go with that, they had her take omeprazole, which was just to help absorb the steroids into the stomach, because I think it's acidic, but I mean, the smell is, it like burns your nose hairs off. The smell is so strong and pungent, and I couldn't imagine taking it, but Skye did pretty well. She didn't really complain much after the first few months, so they had her take omeprazole with it, and this big bottle is about $55 a pop. So after a while, I think towards the end of the first year, I asked the doctor, I'm like, can we get like smaller dosages of this? Because she only takes 5 milliliters every time she takes the steroids. And she's like, Skye can just take Tums. That would have the same effect. I'm like, I wish we knew that in the beginning. This would have saved us like hundreds of dollars. But so after that, she started going on Tums. So that's the first 5 days. This is one called 6MP. This is basically a home chemo med. This is the one where I need to be wearing gloves to give. She's on this for 14 days, once a day, at nighttime. She either takes it completely without food, or with food. You just have to keep it consistent so the body absorbs it the right way. And the measurement on this all depends on her weight and her blood work. So when she was at some of her lowest points, I remember this was only at like 0.4, 0.5 milliliters, and then towards the end she had worked up to 3.3. So that one, and then this one is called Bactrim. It's basically an antibiotic. She is on it Monday, Wednesday, Fridays through the whole treatment for the full 2 years plus 6 months after. So Skye finished chemo in May, and she's still taking it for 6 months after, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I thought I'd tell you what clinic visits are like. So I'm going to be talking about them pre-COVID and what it was like during COVID. So clinic visits started off weekly at first. What happens is you check in, you get there and you park in the garage, you go up the elevator, you check in at the clinic. Skye gets a bracelet, and she gets like a little tracker device. It looks like a little beeper. I put the numbing cream on her port because she is going to get blood drawn. So once we get the blood work done, she meets with the doctor, and she gets like a little physical exam, and we talk with the doctor about how she's doing, if there's any setbacks or anything that's come up, and it's usually pretty quick and to the point. And then Skye would go get chemo, for the first 15 cycles. With the one chemo, we would go right to the chair and get hooked up, and but after that, when we were going once every 3 weeks, she would just get quick pushes of the chemo. It took like 5 minutes tops for the 2 other chemos, and then we got to go home. But in the meantime, between like the exams and the blood work, they have activity tables in the waiting room, one especially for teenagers, which is really nice. But they do, like, there's a different theme every week for like superhero week, things like that. And then there's another resource room, just like they had a resource room at the hospital, there's a resource room at the clinic. And again, kids can play video games. There's a music therapist. That guy is super nice. He would, one of Skye's favorite things to do, in addition to making slime, she loved making slime there. They had all the ingredients to make it. She liked to play on the PlayStation, the Wii, whatever, and do like a dance game. So she liked doing that with the music guy. He always did that with her, and so did some of the volunteers there. Let's see. So when she was doing her long infusions, they can bring crafts there to the kids too, but Skye mostly just stayed on her tablet and or took naps. So there's also a nice cafe on the floor. You can get breakfast and lunch there, and coffee. There's also like a botanical indoor garden, which is really beautiful. Let's see. So that's pre-COVID. Things changed in the summer of 2020. Skye's still going every 3 weeks at this point, but they changed the protocol, and only one parent was allowed to go now. So again, I'm a nervous driver, but I wanted to be there for Skye for the appointment, so I would go as often as I could, being pregnant with Mia and everything, and after I had her. Mike would drive. He would hang out in the garage, or on one level of the garage there's like this waiting room, and there's TVs and couches and Wi-Fi, so he would hang out there sometimes, because visits were pretty quick at that point, just a couple of hours. So only one parent was allowed to go into the building. You would have to check in on the first floor, the Dana-Farber check-in floor, rather than going right up the elevator to the 3rd floor. You had to get screened like 3 times, switching out masks. It was a lot. Then we got to the clinic floor, and we had to get screened there again. There's plexiglass everywhere, and seats are separated. It's hard enough going there as it is, and I completely understand why they're taking all these safety measures for everyone's health, especially the kids. But I found it detrimental at the same time, not just for parents, but for the kids, especially the kids. Both parents want to be there for their child going through this really rough time. But for the kids, I feel like they responded so much better to having more people there with them. Because before, you could bring your whole entire family to clinic. They encouraged it. They encouraged siblings to come, and it was a very family-oriented thing, just to have that support for the kids, for the parents. It was amazing, and they really strongly encouraged that. So when it went down to one parent, I feel like that changed everyone's morale, and I feel like morale can have an effect on physical health too. You know, kids should have both parents there, at least. So they actually recently, I got an email saying that they changed it back, that both parents can go now, but that's it. Only two support people, which is good. I haven't been able to go the last couple times, but hopefully next month, because Skye's down to being done with chemo. She's down to going every month now. So hopefully next month I will be able to go. So that was what clinic visits are like pre-COVID and during COVID. Oh, I wanted to add in what it's like when she gets a lumbar puncture. This was another hard part to see as a parent, watching your child go through it. They would let me hold her as they were giving her the medicine. And if you asked Skye what the worst part of treatment was, I think she would say the white medicine, the medicine that the anesthesiologist uses to put the kids to sleep. She would probably say that was her least favorite part because it left a really bad taste in her mouth. She went through hell. She went through so much worse, but for some reason, just that yucky taste in her mouth, she would say was her least favorite part. But she would fall asleep within seconds, and she would go limp in my arms, and then I would put her on the table, and the doctors and nurses would adjust her, and then a nurse would walk you out, and you look back and see your child laying there unconscious, and the nurses and doctors surrounding her. So I would cry every time I would walk away. Expecting the unexpected, and when I say that, I mean hospitalizations. I didn't think they would happen to us, honestly. I'm sure the doctors talked about it a lot. You know, if Skye spikes a fever or she's not feeling well, you know, this is what needs to happen. But that was just like in the back of my head, like yeah, I got it. But we actually have a family close to us. My sister-in-law knows them very well. They're good friends with them. Their daughter, I think she's 12 now, she was diagnosed with the same kind of leukemia as Skye about 8 months before Skye was diagnosed, so she finished before us. And I remember hearing sometimes, oh, you know, she had to go to the hospital because of the fever, and you know, she's not feeling well, so she had to go down to Boston. And I'm like, that's not gonna happen to us. But it did 4 times. It's a common thing to happen. What would happen is Skye would either spike a fever and it would last, or she would start sounding wheezy and have like that deep cough, that hollow cough, and she would just, you know, parents, you know, that look on your child's face when they have a cold, they just look like completely out of it. Their eyes are slitted, and you can tell there's that look. So Skye had that happened a lot, 4 times. And what happens is you first call Boston. This happened on the weekend a couple of times too, which was harder to get. The clinic was closed, so you had to call Dana-Farber, and then they paged a doctor. So you get on the phone with the doctor, and they, you know, make an assessment of what to do, and they usually say, I want you to go down to your local ER, because we live far away, we can't just, like, Boston's not around the corner. So go to your local ER, check in there, and we would do that. So I would have to make arrangements for Josie, or Mike would have to come home from work early, or a family member would take Josie to get a ride home from school with somebody else until Mike could get out of work, that sort of thing. I would just pack a bag, and we would head to the local ER. Now, I learned this the hard way. You need to pack for like a week. I remember the first time it happened, I just threw a few things into a bag for me and Skye, and like just only 1 extra pair of underwear. We were there for like 4 days. That was an eye-opener. Thank goodness they do have a washer and dryer there, and I've done laundry in the sink before, so learned the hard way that time. You know, pack well. So we go to our local ER. get checked in there. Skye's hooked up to an IV for fluids and for antibiotics, treating it as though she had the flu or a cold. Because of flu season, she would get swabbed. We would wait to get her blood work back. And remember that number, the A and C, if it was 500 or below, that means automatically you're going to Boston. If it was above, then you could go home, but just keep a close eye. That happened once. It was a Saturday. We were in the ER all day. Her ANC was just hovering over 500. It was like 510. But then Skye started sounding worse, so we were back down the next day, and then her blood work, that the ANC dropped drastically. So down to Boston we went. So we go, they transfer us via ambulance. So we have to wait for that to come, and we check into the ER at Children's Hospital too. So same thing happens. She's hooked up to IVs and fluids and more antibiotics, and then more blood work is done, more exams, and basically we wait for a room to open up upstairs on the oncology floor. Remember one time it happened early in the morning. We were down at our local ER by 8:39 in the morning, and then it's an all-day thing, you know, the drive down and then check into the ER there. We finally got into a room at 11:30 at night, so it's an exhausting all-day thing. So basically we're there for 3-4 days until, you know, her blood work comes back up and she's treated, you know, she's treated as though she has a cold or the flu. Wait for her levels to come back up. A lot of the times she needed blood transfusions because her counts were so low, and platelets. And you could tell Skye was feeling super crummy. She just laid there like a zombie almost. Sometimes she would feel well enough to do some crafts at her little rolling table, hospital bed table. She would do some crafts there, but most of the time she slept and just felt really, really crummy. So it happened once in October, I want to say, of 2019, and then Thanksgiving, and then New Year's Day, and then Valentine's Day. So we were there over the course of 3 holidays. So that's the unexpected to expect. Let me see. Bear with me here. I'm looking through some notes. Alright, I want to talk about something super fun. Insurance. That turned out to be a huge part of all this. I mean, that's understandable, right? Because so much is being done for Skye's treatment, but it was really tough the first year because so many, you know, Skye's getting started on chemo. She's being seen by dozens and dozens of doctors. She's gotten all sorts of exams and x-rays and all sorts of medications and hospital visits. So there's all these claims being submitted to the insurance company that basically, how do I explain it? Their system got overloaded, and I would be getting the same bill over and over from our insurance company or from the hospital. So it was, we ended up getting a case manager on it, a pediatric case manager who deals with insurance, and she would relay messages between me and the insurance company. But sometimes I would be on with the insurance for hours, spent quite a lot of time with them, and even they got confused. They said so many claims were being submitted that their system got confused, and then they would have to reprocess the claims, and sometimes even that didn't work. So I'd be getting the same bill over and over again, even though it was completely paid. We have good insurance, but it's still, things still add up, because one is for medical and the other is for prescription, and the deductible for that is even higher than the, you know, the regular one, the medical one. So you know, things were all scrambled in their system. So that was a huge stressful point, dealing with that. Even the next year, I still got one bill that, you know, we were way over deductible by that point, and I paid everything, but I still got one bill from the previous year. So, and at that point they were like, you know, don't worry about it. I'm sure everything's fine. Everything was paid. They know that for sure. But that was a stressful time. And then the following year, 2020, you know, Skye, we had met our deductible on the first day, January 1st, because she needed to go down via ambulance to Children's. So we met the deductible that day for the whole entire year, just from the ambulance ride, because that's like 10 times more than the deductible the ambulance ride is for that. The ambulance company would submit it to insurance, and then insurance would cover it. But what changed in 2020 was I would get a bill from the ambulance company, and then I would need to submit it to insurance, and then insurance would write me a check, and then I would have to mail it to the ambulance company. So they, you know, they're skipping an extra step for them, but adding an extra step for me. So that was a little stressful, because I wasn't sure at first. I had gotten the ambulance bill. I'm like, oh, insurance is going to take care of this. Maybe this is just, you know, like a summary of what happened, a statement. But no, I got like a second notice, and you know, I called, and they said, no, you need to handle it. It's you know, it's your responsibility to do this part. So yeah, that was fun. Not. Alright, so looking back now, I'm going to be completely honest and say it almost feels like it didn't happen the last 2 years. It almost feels it. Feels very surreal. I know it was real. It did happen. I can feel it in my bones, because I remember, you know, I get flashbacks every day of what happened. But it's just a strange feeling now that it's done. Now that I look back, it flew by. It flew by. Well, it was one hell of a journey, and Skye, if you ever see this one day, I just want to say that I'm so proud of you. I am so proud of you. You are amazing. You are the strongest person I know. You are my hero. You are Super Skye, and I love you. It's just, we're grateful it's done. We're grateful for all the friends and family that were there for us, took care of us, took care of Josie during that, you know, the first phase. We're grateful for the family that made a GoFundMe, so we were able to not have to worry about a lot of things. And I had friends reach out to me from high school, I mean, that I hadn't heard from them in, you know, 15, 16, 17 years, and old friends from high school reached out. So that was just amazing. People rally, and that's really, really important. So I just want to say thank you to them, thank you to everybody in our family, and thank you to you all who are listening right now, being part of our journey. That means a lot to me too, for you to listen as I share this, because it's really important to us. And you know, just talking today like I am, it's helping to give me a little bit of closure. So I thank you, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon.